Yevamos Daf Pei Ches contains 3 sugyas. The daf begins at the Gemara's conclusion in the Gemara's final discussion, looking for the source of the halacha that a single witness in Eid Echad is believed to allow a woman to remarry. The Gemara will then bring a statement of Rav on our Mishnah that said that she has to leave her husband, her new husband, if her husband returns. The Gemara will analyze Rav's statement, and then we have a similar statement of Shmuel. The Gemara will analyze Shmuel. Those are the 3 sugyas. So let's begin. The Gemara is searching for the source that we allow a woman to remarry if one witness comes and says her husband died. What is the source of this? Why is one aid trusted? So the Gemara is trying its second attempt for a source. The Gemara says that it should be svar, it should be logical. If a person comes and he says, hey, that piece of meat that you have over there is mutter, we trust him. Rashi says, how do we know? Because otherwise you can't eat anything. How do you know to trust the person who gives it to you that is kosher at all? Obviously, a single person is trusted to tell you that a piece of meat is a mutter piece of meat. If that's the case, so then you see that a single aid is trusted in Isurim. So the Gemara says there's no comparison. Over there's no reason to assume that it was usher. Over there, it was no original state that was established that the meat was ever usher. Somebody comes and he says, you don't know anything about this meat, I'm telling you that it's mutter. Yeah, there you trust one aid. Over here, this woman we know she was initially usher to everybody else. She was at some point definitely a married woman. And then you have a witness who's coming to say that changed. That's called ischaze kisura. He wants to change an existing status of Isser. We do not have a source that is mutter. We don't have anything that says that is logically something that you can just assume. We also have a rule, anything which involves the erva, anything which involves a surim of a marriage, we do not trust less than 2. If you want to compare this case to something about meat, you can compare it to the following thing. You have a piece of meat which we know for sure is chaylev, it's iser meat, we saw when it came out of the cow, and when this comes in he says, no, it's mutter. Okay, so that's what's happening here. This woman was for sure usher, and somebody comes and says, no, she's mutter. So you don't believe him about the meat, you don't believe him about her either over here. So again, we're stuck with a problem why you trust an Eid Echad. So the person says, hold on a second. You're going to compare it to the case where a guy comes and he says that a piece of meat which you know is usher is really mutter. If we know it's usher, I don't care if 100 witnesses come and say it's mutter. We know it's usher. That's not what it's comparable to. It's comparable to a case where the status could change. The case of the piece of meat, the status can change. If it's non-kosher meat, it's non-kosher meat. Nothing you can do is going to make it mutter. You should compare it to a case where a witness comes and says that the status changed. And we have an example of that. We have 3 cases where a witness comes and says the status changed, and we do trust him. What's that? So we have the case of tevel, hektish, and konam. Tevel is if you had grain which requires truma or ma'aser to be separated from it, and we know it didn't have truma or ma'aser separated from it, and somebody comes and says at some point later it was separated, he's believed. Hektish, if something was hektish, so it belongs to hektish and it's also for us to use, and somebody comes and says it was redeemed, so he's believed. Konam, if something had a konam vow, that's a type of neder on it where somebody said it's a konam, the Gemara will explain it further, and then we have someone who says that was redeemed, he's believed. So again, you see someone is believed to say that the status changed. So here also the aid is saying that the status changed, saying she was married but now she's not, her husband died. So you could believe her just like there it's logical to believe her, here it's logical to believe her. So where it says no, you can't compare the 2 cases for the very simple reason that in the case of the tevel, hektish, and konam, the person who's testifying, one of 2 things: either he can change it himself, or we don't really know that he's believed. So you can't prove to me from there where he could change it himself to here where he can't make this woman be mutter. He can't kill her husband. So it's not, he's testifying about something which he doesn't have the power to do. We only trust him, we only trust in Eid Echad where it's biyado l'takna, where he could do something about it. So now the Gemara is going to go through the 3 cases one by one and discuss what the possibilities are. So first of all, the case of tevel. So he's testifying that somebody else's tevel, someone else's untrumad, unmeisered fruits are now heter, because truma and meiser was taken from it. So you could hold one of 2 ways. You could either hold that he has the ability to fix it, because you hold that he could take meiser or truma on it from his own fruits, and you also hold that if he does that, he doesn't have to notify the owner of those fruits that he fixed them. In which case, it could be that he fixed these. They're not his fruits, but he fixed them anyway. That could be. If that's the case, he's believed because it's biyado. He has the ability to fix them. If, however, we're talking about a situation or a shita where we hold that he can't do it. He has to notify the guy if he fixes it, or he can't fix it from his own fruits. So then you don't have a source that he really is believed in that case. How do you know that he is believed? And as far as hektish, if you hold that it's, if we're referring to where it's Kedushas Damim, where it has value, it's not a carbon itself. It just has, its value was given to hektish to sell and to use. So then the halacha is that he could redeem it. He could give value, he could exchange value for it. If that's true, so then it's viyado l'takno. Now, if it's kedushas aguf, that is the carbon itself, you can't redeem karbonos. You can, however, possibly be shoel on it. You can go to a chacham and you can say, I didn't realize that what I was doing, if I had understood what circumstances would occur, I would never have made this into hektish in the first place. Now that's only true if it's his. He was makdish it. So if it's his and he was makdish it, then it's biyado. He could unmakdish it by being shoel on it. However, if it's someone else's, he can't. And there, you really don't know that he's believed to say that somebody was shoel on it. So, again, you have no source that he's believed in anything which is not biyado l'takno. Now, as far as konam is a term which means carbon. It's a mush of the word carbon. As a machlokes, what happens when a person makes an object konam? If he says konam alai, did he make it a carbon and therefore now it's hektish kedushas haguf? Or did he just make a isser on it? He said that it's usher to him. He made a neder that he's not going to have hana from it. If he made it hektish, then he could redeem it. So it's biyado l'takno. If it's just an isser on it, and he can't redeem it, so then, first of all, if it's his, he could be shoel on it. He could ask a chacham to change his neder. If it's not his, so then again, you have no source that is believed to say that it returned to its state of heter. So again, in all these three, you don't show me anywhere where somebody could testify that something changed and it's not in his ability to do it. And therefore, in our case, you shouldn't trust the Echad who testifies that this woman has now become mutter because her husband has died. So the Gemara therefore goes to its third source. The Gemara says is that the reason that we allow an Eirecha to be trusted here is because we have all these strict rules. If she's not going to make sure that she's really mutter and her husband really died, she's going to get messed up for life, for good. We have a lot of halachos listed in the Mishnah on the previous daf, and therefore we know that it's very chomer. She knows that it's very chomer, and therefore we could allow her to have a leniency to rely on an Eirecha in exchange. So the Gemara asks, obviously, what was the point in that? Why did you make it lenient for her to get married and chomer get very strict if she gets messed up? Why don't you just make it not lenient to get married, follow regular halachos, and not strict, not extra strict. Don't make it extra lenient to get married and extra strict if she gets the wrong psak. Why do you have to do that? So the Gemara says, no, we did it because otherwise there's a problem of iguna, a problem of a situation in which a woman cannot get remarried. And we want to avoid that, therefore we made this leniency. Now we have a statement of Rav on the Mishnah, and the Gemara will analyze, try to figure out what exactly Rav was saying, what was his case, and then the Gemara will have a kasha and answer for Rav. So the Mishnah, we had seen that it says, at least in the beginning of the Mishnah, it says that if a woman remarries, then her husband comes and returns, she cannot stay married to either of them. And then later it says that if she remarries, she can stay married. So the Gemara says that when it says that she cannot stay married, that was referring to where she married al-pi eid echad. That's when she cannot stay married. The Gemara understands it means she can't stay married to the second guy. So that's where it's al-pi eid echad. However, if two eidim came and said that she's allowed to marry the second guy, that means if originally she married the second guy because two witnesses came and told her that her husband had died, then even if the husband comes back, she's allowed to stay married to the second guy. So the Gemara says that in the West, in Eretz Yisrael, they laughed at this, and they said her husband is standing right there. Who cares how many witnesses said that he died? He's standing right there. How could you let her stay married to the second guy? She's obviously married to her first husband because here he is. So the Gemara says we're not talking about where we recognize the guy, we know that he's returned. We're talking about where somebody comes and claims that he's the one, and we don't recognize him, but he has two witnesses that support him. Two witnesses come and say that he's the one. They say, we were with him from when he left until now. You may not recognize him, just like Yosef's brothers. didn't recognize him, although he recognized them. It's possible to not recognize a family member. So you don't recognize him, but we're telling you, witnesses were testifying this is the same guy. In a case like that, so you have the two initial witnesses came and said that he died. Those are saying that she's permitted to marry the second guy and she can stay married to the second guy. That's against two witnesses who said that here he is. This is the guy. So it's 2 against 2. Now, if the original heter was based on one witness, then it's 2 against 1. In a case like that, we have to believe the second set of Aiden because there are 2. And she has to be divorced she has to leave her second husband because she had no right to marry him. If, however, she originally married by 2 people, so then it's 2 against 2, and that's why Rav is poskening that in that case she's allowed to stay married to her second husband because we don't necessarily believe that he's returned, that the first one has returned. It's 2 against 2. So the Gemara says, how could she stay married to him? It's at least a suffix. It's a suffix whether she's doing an isakaris. The halacha is whenever you have a suffix, if you do an isakaris, you have to bring a carbon asham taloi. So in this situation, she has to bring an asham taloi on all her past biyas that she did with him. She certainly can't stay married to him. How does that make any sense? So the Gemara says, no, we're talking about where the guy the husband is one of the original witnesses that said, meaning her second husband is one of the original witnesses that said her first husband had died, and therefore he knows for sure. He's not in the suffix. He doesn't have to bring an asham taloi. He knows for sure. He's not involved in the 2 against 2. He's not worried about 2 against 2. He says, I know for sure that the original husband had died. Gemara says, he knows for sure. What about her? Gemara says, she also says she knows for sure. So it's 2 against 2, since both parties involved, the woman and her second husband, say that they know for sure that they're mutter to each other, they don't have to bring an Hashem Tali, and they're allowed to stay married to each other. The Gemara says, if that's true, so what's a chiddush? Because this exact case is discussed in Maseches Ksubis, and it's a machlokes between Rabbi Menachem ber Rabbi Yosi and the Tanna Kama. The Tanna Kama there says, in a case like this, where it's 2 against 2, so there is a different setup of 2 against 2. The first, you have 2 who said that he died, 2 who said her first husband had died, and 2 who said no, her first husband is definitely alive. That's similar to this one. Or you have 2 who said that she was divorced, and then you have 2 who said that she's not divorced. Either way, you have 2 against 2 as to whether she's allowed to remarry or not. And she went and she married a second guy. So the Chachamim, the Tanna Kama over there, they hold that she's not allowed to go marry somebody else, but if she did, she can stay married to him. It's 2 against 2, she doesn't have to separate. Now, Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yosi says it depends. It depends if she remarried before the suffix was fully known. If she remarried when she just had 2 witnesses saying she's allowed to, and then later 2 came and said she's not allowed to, so there we say, look, she married Beheter, she could stay married to the guy. We don't have to believe the 2 who came afterwards. If, however, the 2 sets of witnesses were here already, and then she remarried, then we say she has to go. So either way, what's Rav saying? What is Rav's halach over here? What is he adding? Even Rabbi Menachem only said in a case where she had 2 witnesses in the first place that said that she's not allowed to remarry. That's where she has to be separated from the second guy. But in a normal case where she remarried first and then 2 witnesses came, which is our case, the guy came from Medina Sayyam. So what is what's Rav's chiddush that she's allowed to stay married? Nobody holds otherwise. So the Gemara says what Rav means to do is he means to paskin that shaila over there. Rav could either be saying, no, it's dafka in a case where the 2 witnesses came later. That's why we allow her to separate, but otherwise she would have to not separate. And therefore Rav's point is that the halacha is like Rabbi Menachem ben Rabbi Yosi, and had the 2 witnesses come before she remarried, had the 2 that asked her come before she remarried, they would have to separate. Or Rav is passing like the Chachamim. Rav is saying it doesn't matter, the Mishnah doesn't differentiate, it makes no difference when they came, and he's coming to tell you that even had the 2 witnesses come first, she would be allowed to stay married to the second guy. Okay, we've established what Rav said. Now the Gemara has a couple of kashas on him. One kasha primarily, which we'll begin with, and that's Rava, who says we have a brisa that seems to say clearly that she cannot stay married to the second guy, even in this case. The brisa is talking about a Kohen who does not want to keep Hilchos Kahuna, and it says we force him to separate himself from the Isurim, from the things that he's not allowed to marry. So the Gemara says, what's this case? What are we referring to? If we're referring to a straight up Isser, so why do I need a brisa to tell me that? The brisa finds the source. It says Vikidashtai. Vikidashtai means you force him. Baal Karcha, you're Mekadesh him. What do you need that for? Obviously, if the guy, it's like any other Isser, if you have someone who insists on doing an Isser, we punish him, and he's not allowed to. So the Gemara says it has to be referring to where there's some kind of suffix involved. And that's a case like this, where you have two pairs of Eidim. One says that there's a woman who's allowed to marry him. One says there's a woman who's not. Well, not him, but one says there's a woman who's in a forbidden marriage and got a din zona because she was married to her original husband. And one who said that the original husband is gone. And this, and you had each of them said, I know for sure. She said, I know for sure that my husband is gone. The guy said, I know for sure he's gone. And therefore you have this situation. And yet, the Brisa, that must be the case. There's nothing else that could be that the Brisa is being mechadish to us. And yet the Brisa comes to say that in that case she does become a zona. And therefore you have, you are commanded to separate the Kohen from being with her because she has this status of a suffix zona. So the Gemara says, yet you still see clearly that she does have a status of zona, in which case she does have to separate from the second guy. So why is Rab saying that she's allowed to stay with the second guy? So the Gemara gives four answers. The Gemara's first answer is to say that kahuna is different. There's a special chumrah for kohanim. It's a higher level stringency. You can't learn anything from this brisa to our case. Second answer is when we say that we make him separate, we don't say that doesn't mean to say that we assume she's not allowed to stay married to the second guy. We say as far as kohanim are concerned, we want to take a special level of chumrah, and therefore we search very hard for the second pair of Eidim. We go find those second pair of Eidim. It doesn't mean that we separate them in the case where the Eidim are already there. Third answer the Gemara gives is that this is the opinion of Rabbi Menachem bar Rabbi Yosi, who holds that she has to separate, and Rav, who said she didn't have to separate, was going like the Tanakama. This is according to the version of what we said earlier, that Rav is going like the Tanakama, and it's talking about in the case where she first got married, where the second pair of Eidim came before she chose to remarry. Now, the Gemara's fourth answer is to give a whole new pshat in what Rav said, and that's for Rashi, who says that Rav was not talking about the second husband. It wasn't saying she could stay married to the second husband. He was saying that she could go back to her first husband, and you don't have to say that she's us to her first husband because she was now mizana with her second husband. She's considered to be an onus. Two witnesses came and said she's mutter to her first husband. She went back to him. There's not a din asur l'bal asur l'boel, and that's why she goes back to her first husband. So the Gemara's kash on that is that Rav already said that once. We have a different Mishnah where Rav says she's allowed to go back to her, where the Mishnah says she's allowed to go back to her first husband, and Rav said that's the halacha. Halacha l'maisa, she's allowed to go back to her first husband. She's considered an onus. So why would he repeat it? So the Gemara says he didn't repeat it. Rav said it once, and there were two different Amoraim who quoted him. One said it over straight, Mefurish that he heard Rav say it, and one figured it out from something else that Rav said. But it's not Rav that actually said the same thing twice. Alright, this concludes the Gemara's discussion of Rav's halacha. We now introduce Shmuel's halacha. Shmuel comments on the Mishnah. The Mishnah had said that a woman who gets married by one witness who said that her husband died, and then the witness comes back, she has to divorce her second husband. She can't stay with her second husband. So the Gemara says that's only if she accepts her husband coming back, and she agrees that he is the husband. If, however, she disagrees, that is, then she can stay married to her second husband. So the Gemara says, what's Shmuel talking about? Who's supporting the husband? Obviously, it's not the husband alone. Who's supporting the husband? If she's arguing, so why would we believe him? Who's supporting the husband? If you have two witnesses supporting the husband and saying that this is the husband, so then why would you believe the woman even if she argues? Who cares? That's two witnesses saying this is the husband. If there's only one witness, so then we have a problem. Because Shmuel is seeming to say that if she argues, then we will trust her and not them. But even if she doesn't say anything, if there's only one witness that's supporting him, and she says she doesn't know, she's not accepting him, she's not arguing, she just says she doesn't know, but there's one that's supporting him, that one that's supporting him is going up against the witness, which initially said that her husband had died. So you have one against one. Now, generally, the rule when you have one against one is that we don't know what to do. However, in this case, the one who said that he died has a special nemanis. And we have a statement of Ula that any time a witness has a special nemanis, he counts as two Eidim. Therefore, the one who said that husband died counts as two. The one who said that this is the husband counts as one, two against one. And therefore, we should believe the one who counts as two, who said that she is allowed to remarry and she should be able to stay with her second husband. So the Gemara offers two approaches to answer this. The Gemara's first approach is that we're going like Rabbi Nechemia, and we're talking about Eidim Psulim. Rabbi Nechemia holds not like Lula. Rabbi Nechemia holds that when we accept one aid, we're accepting a puzzle aid. We're not making him to two Eidim. We're not believing him. We are posketing based on what he said because we count the numbers of opinions who said what. And we're talking about over here where all the Eidim involved were Psulim. The aid that said that the husband is not coming back, he died, he's a single aid, so he's a puzzle aid because he's alone. Then there were two women or two other Psule Eidus who came and said that this is the husband. So you have two Psule Eidus against one puzzle aid, and you count the number of opinions. Again, not being Makabal them as Eidus, you just count the opinions. So if the woman herself doesn't say anything, she doesn't have an opinion, it's 2 against 1, and therefore we take the two opinions that say this is the husband, and she has to leave her second husband. If, however, she agrees that with the first aid, and she says, this is not my husband, then it's 2 against 2. 2 against 2, we'll go with her chazaka. She's allowed to stay married to her second husband. She doesn't have to divorce him. She doesn't have to leave him. That's what Shmuel was referring to. Now, the Gemara has another approach over here, which is also going to go in Rabbi Nechemia's opinion, and he says the same thing happens according to Rabbi Nechemia if they were ksherim. We'll say now that Rabbi Nechemia really fits with Ula, and Rabbi Nechemia would agree that if the original aid that had said that she's allowed to remarry was a kosher aid, he would be accepted 100%. Here we're talking about where the original aid was puzzle also. It was a woman perhaps, and therefore you have only psule aidis. And Rabbi Nechemia would say if you have psule aidis, Rabbi Nechemia is not arguing at all. He's saying in a case where you have psule aidis, you don't count it as nothing. You count up the number of opinions, and therefore you have the same cheshbon. If you would have the woman agreeing, then it's 2 against 2, and she could stay married. If you don't, then it's 2 against 1. And you would have to say that she has to separate from her second husband.